Hello, everyone. I hope we are live now. So my name is Alex. I'm CTO of Tag Digital, and today we are going to talk about Google Analytics 4, what you need to know and why you should need to act now. Before we start the webinar and the presentation, I have a few questions. So we are going to use Slido for this one. So you can go to Slido, enter the code, and then you'll be able to ask any questions through the presentation. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to try to cover all the answers of this question, at least all the answers that we know. And if we can't cover something, then we can follow up through an email. So before we start, I have a few questions. So the first one is do you know what GA4 is, or Google Analytics 4? And I'm waiting for your answers. I see there's a few people. All right. Okay. So now 75% knows what GA4 is. I'll give you another 30 seconds before I go to the next question. All right. So 75% know what GA4 is. Then the next question is, how often do you use Google Analytics, generally speaking? Yeah, we have once a week, rarely, 50-50 once a week, 67% once a month. Yeah, that's interesting. Probably most of the people say once a week, or not most, 50% say once a week, or 60% now, which is good. So yeah, Google Analytics is kind of a tool that you can use to track your website or your website performance or your marketing performance. So if you're marketing, probably you need to use it at least once a week. So thanks for that. And my last question is, do you have Google Analytics code installed on your website? Let's see. We have 67%. I don't know at the moment. No. So yeah, okay, let's move forward. So 60% say, I don't know if we have installed Google Analytics 4, and 40% say no, and 0% say yes. So 50-50 no, and I don't know. So, okay, so this probably webinar will cover a lot of something that you need to know at the moment. So let's just dive in. I would say any questions through the webinar, just post them in Slido, and then we can answer at the end. So what is the new thing? So what you can see on the screen is an official announcement from Google Analytics blog from 16th of March 2020. And it says that old standard Universal Analytics properties will stop processing new hits on July 1st, 2023. And 360 Universal Analytics properties will stop processing new hits on October 1st, 2033. After that, you'll be able to access your previously processed data in Universal Analytics for at least 6 months. And what that means, in simple words, that means that Google is retiring Universal Analytics and pushing all users to start using GA4. But before we dive in what exactly that means, a little bit of history, I say probably that's probably interesting facts. At least it's interesting for me. I hope they're interesting for you as well. So how it all happened with Google Analytics. So it started when Google acquired Urchin Software Corporation in April 2005. And then they launched a Google branded version in November same year, and was free for everyone to sign up. However, there was an extremely high demand for the service, and the new signups were suspended for a week later after they launched, and then they start using lottery type invitation codes and this kind of model that you're invited to join this new software. And then since August 2006, the service has been fully available for all users, whether they use Google for advertising or not. And the interesting fact here is that we all know, or I assume we all know, and at least heard UTM tracking codes, UTM tracking. So these are the parameters that we put to decorate our links, but actually UTM comes historically for Urchin tracking module. So that comes from 2005 and still it's in place. Then what's happened with Google, in 2008, they announced new version of Google Analytics, and the new version of Google Analytics tracking code is known as an asynchronous tracking code, which means that the analytics tracking can be done at the same time as rendering other content, and therefore won't delay other page content from rendering. So you can simultaneously render the page, the content of the page, and the tracking code, which was not the case before that. So that makes it more faster and more accurate, and you can track short activities on the website. Then in 2012, there was another version introduced by Google, and it was called Universal Analytics. And the key difference from the previous version is that there was cross-platform tracking, flexible tracking code to collect data from any devices, and the introduction of custom dimension and custom metrics. And this is still the version we are using today. This is Universal Analytics. And in 2017, Google introduced Firebase for Analytics, which was specifically designed for measuring app performance. But actually, this version of Google Analytics Firebase was the core for building GA4, which was introduced in 2020. So that's the history of Google Analytics till now. You can see a lot's happening in just 15 years. So what is Google Analytics 4? The Google Analytics 4 is a new kind of property with several advantages over Universal Analytics. First, it's privacy focused and durable for future. I assume that Google pushed to Google Analytics before the privacy and all the concerns around that, and I can cover this in a minute. Then the second thing is that it's more intelligent. It uses machine learning to unearth insights about the customer journey across platform and devices. And third, we have enhanced seamless integration with Google advertising platform to optimize campaign performance and drive greater marketing ROI. So this is Google Analytics 4. So why do we need Google Analytics 4? What's actually the reason of that? I just make one kind of a small side note here. Yesterday, I read an article about one retailer called Mr. N from Fiji, who used depreciated technology to run his retail business for 20 plus years without doing any changes, as it worked exactly as expected. So he basically used technology that's no one's even maintained at the moment, but it was worked for him. And you might think, well, why do we need GA4 if we have Universal Analytics ready and we're tracking everything? So I have 4 reasons I want to share with you why we need GA4 compared with Universal Analytics. So the first reason is that GA4 uses customer-centric measurement, which means that the data model that GA4 is using is different from the data model of Universal Analytics. Universal Analytics is built on session-based data model that is 15 years old at the moment. This was said before smartphones were widely used. And just a quick reminder, from first quarter of 2017, mobile traffic worldwide hit 50% and continue to grow. So there's kind of new challenges for properly measuring the website traffic. Universal Analytics measure was built for independent sessions, which is group of user interaction with a given time frame on a device, and user activities were tracked with cookies. Because of that, in Universal Analytics, a single person visiting on different devices will be counted as a multiple users by default. And you can see when you have users interacting through their laptops, through their desktop, through their other devices like a connected TV, mobile devices, and apps, it's just getting more and more challenging to have accurate data. And this is even getting worse when you add mobile apps to the equation. So GA4 offers customer-centric measurement, which means it measures, unifies, and deduplicate the interaction your users have across their devices, website, and app. So the second reason of why you need Google Analytics 4 is because you have smarter insights to drive your marketing efforts. So Google's advanced machine learning models are implemented directly into Google Analytics 4. Analytics intelligence is a set of features that use machine learning to help you better understand and act on your data. Marketers don't need to dig into custom reports and have extensive and very, very good experience with Google Analytics to get answers they need on day-to-day basis. You said you use once a week, so you know that with Universal Analytics, sometimes it's really hard to get the data you need. And these analytics intelligence functions include something like answers to your questions. You can ask analytics intelligence a question in plain English and get a fast answer. For example, you can say which channels had the highest conversion rate last week, and then analytics will show you the ranked list of Go conversions rated by channel. Inside Analytics Intelligence will analyze your data and surface insight on major changes or opportunities you should be aware of. For example, it can point out that a certain landing page or certain page is performing better than normal, so you can check this page, analyze what's the reason, and then act based on that data. Also, Analytics Intelligence provides 2 types of insights. So first one is automated insights. Analytics Intelligence detects unusual changes or emerging trends in your data and notifies you automatically on the Insight dashboard with Google Analytics 4 platform. But you also have a custom insight, so you can create conditions that detect changes in your data that are important to you. And when these conditions are triggered, you see insights in the dashboard as well. You'll get email alerts as an addition. And also there is one kind of new feature, which is contribution analysis. And this is a statistical technique used by Analytics Intelligence to identify user segments contributing to anomalies. So basically, that means that GA4 regularly scans your data for anomalies in metrics, and if anomaly are found or detected, the Analytics Intelligence may identify granular user segments that demonstrate these anomalies, and then you can basically create an audiences and do something with this audience, or include or use it in marketing, or exclude them based on the kind of trend you have. So the third reason for Google Analytics is that, and probably this is one of the main reasons, is that GA4 adapts with changing privacy landscape. So Google has specifically referred to the data privacy by design approach when they're using in building out GA4. In practice, that means that GA4 has some updated features that allow easier compliance with common data privacy laws. And GA4 was designing to work in a future with or without cookies. Although first-party cookies are still used for tracking, companies can use their own user ID or integration with Google Signals for user identification. And there's like a few changes in GA4 for taking into consideration with new privacy requirement. The first thing which is new to GA4 is GA4 use anonymizing IP. So by default, the IP addresses are anonymized, and these settings cannot be adjusted. And this is really privacy friendly. And this is not something which was the case and which was a feature in Universal Analytics. So the second one is the consent mode. So announced late in 2020, the consent mode feature provides in Google Tag Managers allows you to configure your Google tags, whether they're analytics or ads tags or Google Ads tags, to respect user consent choices. So you can start your new Google Analytics for implementation that offers you an opportunity to configure your GA4 tags for the start using consent mode to ensure your tracking responds accurately to users' opt-in or out decision. Then the third thing is data retention, which is a little bit different from Universal Analytics. So in Universal Analytics, you were able to configure data retention to a series of timeframes from 14 months minimum to do not automatically expire maximum. In GA4, simplifies this with just two aggressive options. You have 2 months or 14 months, and you can't extend more than 14 months. And this limited retention timeframes force you to retain data for less time, pushing you toward compliance with GDPR and other data privacy policy laws. Focus on ensuring you only retain your user data as long as you need it. And the fourth thing related to privacy is the data sharing between Google products. So Google provides a number of options for you to share GA4 data for other tools in the Google ecosystem, specifically Google Signals and ad personalization. From the privacy perspective, you need to be very careful here. If you're considering opting into either Signals or ad personalization, you must consider which privacy regulation your company must to comply. For example, if you comply with GDPR, then Signals and ad personalization supports ad profile building and therefore require an explicit opt-in from the user. In any case, if you're looking to share GA4 data with other Google products, then you should ensure your privacy policy documents this properly. So the fourth reason is just that this is the future. So if we go back to example with Mr. N from Fiji, he has a choice because he can use this depreciated technology because it's working, even if it was hard to maintain. But unfortunately, this is not the case with Google Analytics 4 because just Universal Analytics will stop working in a year time, nearly. So what you need to do next, so what are the next steps you need to do to basically cope with this one? So the first one I would suggest is to audit your current Universal Analytics setup, rethink your measurement plan, your micro and macro conversions and create GA4 configuration plan. And now is the good time to basically do some sort of cleaning and simplifying of your account, because I know there's a lot of account with a lot of goals set up that never been used. So if you don't use it, just don't set it again. Then the next thing you need to do, and this you need to do as soon as possible, is to set new GA4 property and deploy code as soon as possible so you can start recording data. Keep in mind that you need to do that before July 2023, but also keep in mind that if you want to have a full year of data that you're going to use for comparison in future, and you don't want to have a gaps in data, it's good to deploy the code before July 2022, which means this month, basically. Then next step you need to do is set up all events you need to collect. There's kind of a difference with how Universal Analytics and GA4 work. So everything in GA4 is events. So everything you need to track is created by defining an event. So you need to define what you need to track, set up all of those events, and start recording the data and conversions based on that events. Then the next thing is you need to get familiar with the new interface and reporting. And finally, you need to make plans to extract historical data from Universal Analytics before July 2023 and store it for more analysis and comparison in future. Probably the good option is to export the data to BigQuery or something like that, so you have it. And if you need to do some comparison like a previous years, you can basically use this data you already have in BigQuery and compare with the data from GA4. Actually, GA4 has a native connection to BigQuery as well. So how we can help with all this GA4 journey? So we can set up GA4 property and apply it all best practices and the practices based on your business. We can set up events for tracking based on your needs, set up or migrate goals, tracking audiences as well, link in GA4 with all platforms you need, set up reporting, initial user management, and team training, GA4 team training. And because of that, we think a lot of how we can just simplify things and make it applicable to everyone. So that's why we just create 2 different packages. So the first one is, we call that Get Ahead. It's £1,500, and basically this includes this full service cover, an audit for your current Universal Analytics setup, full GA4 account setup, conversions and event tracking setup, traffic filtering when needed, account linking and reporting, and also training to your team with a 1-hour Q&A, so you can go through all that you have and how you can basically use it. And then we have one, like a simple service, which is for those that already have GA4 setup, but they're not quite sure if it's working properly. Are they missing something? Is it everything okay? Do you need something else, or things like that? And then we call that Get Healthy. And basically it provides a full audit covering all the topics we covered in the other. Review the account setup and analyze basic property settings, account linking, filtering, traffic, etc. And then we end up with recommendations that you can implement by yourself. And I think this is me. Now time for questions. I'm just going to go here and wait for any questions. Let's see. Okay, we have a first questions. Can you migrate goals from Universal Analytics to GA4? Yes, you can migrate goals. I'll say probably 2 weeks ago, it was unable to migrate events-based goals from Universal Analytics to GA4. But because this is still product in kind of a process of building, I'll say, okay, you can try to migrate, but I personally will reset them again in GA4 directly to be sure that everything is set up correctly. So yeah, you can migrate, but I'll suggest to basically reset them in the new property. Are there any limitations? Yeah, of course, there are limitations, and there's a lot of differences. So about limitations, for example, you can have up to 500 events per property. Also, you can have up to 100 audiences, I think, and up to 30 different conversions or goals. One of the main limitations is that you may retain user-specific data for not more than 14 months. So you need to define if you want to keep it for 2 or 14 months. And yeah, that's are the kind of the main limitations that comes to my head at the moment. What are the main differences between Universal Analytics and GA4? So there is a lot of differences. The main difference is the way the data flows between the interaction with your application, website, or whatever property you're tracking, and Google Analytics. So it used something called data streams, which was not exactly the same in Universal Analytics. Also, GA4 do not have views, so this is something new. You know that in a normal Universal Analytics, you can basically have different views and filter data in the view, so this is not a thing in GA4. Also, everything in GA4 is measured by events, so you need to define all the events you need to do a measurement that you want. And there's a lot of other things, like, for example, there's no support for regex in defining the events. And what else? I think, yeah, that's the main thing, but the product is still building. So there's some feature that you can see in Universal, you can't see in GA4, but Google team is working on getting as much as possible and as much as applicable to the new product. Is GA4 going to help make our advertising spend more effective at reaching our specific target markets? Well, that's an interesting question. The software probably will track more accurately what you're doing, but it doesn't mean that it's going to help you with your advertising spend. But yeah, you can have, I think you can have better insights based on the data. What is your turnaround time for your service? I think it's 10 working days once you brief. So you brief as, you know, a normal brief. We have a Google Analytics for brief. You brief your project, we review that, create a measurement plan, and once agree what needs to be done, we need up to 10 days to do it. Yeah, and yeah, we're 29 minutes. So thanks very much for joining. If you have any other questions, just ping me an email at alex@tagdigital.co.uk. And thanks very much. Have a good day.